Speak English or get out. That's pretty much what the new law says about truck drivers. You need to go ahead and speak English in order for you to drive a truck. But what do you think is going to happen now with these facilities, these shippers and receivers? Let's say there are going to be some drivers that are just going to go ahead and disregard that law 100%. But what if the shippers and receivers then start saying, hey, we're not going to break the law. It's the law. You need to speak English. Otherwise, you're not going to get loaded. So do you guys think that only DOT is going to go ahead and enforce this law, or are shippers and receivers also going to go ahead and put their foot down? And it might not stop there. You know, we've all been there in some truck stops where somebody doesn't speak English and they're holding up the line, and it's just like a big mess just because they don't understand what's going on. Could it be that also truck stops are just going to go ahead and flat out refuse to help you out? I mean, wouldn't you be helping a criminal at that point? I'm just curious to see how far this will go. What are your thoughts?
Welcome back to AI Crystal. Today, we're diving into a topic that's stirred quite a bit of discussion. President Trump's executive order requiring all truck drivers to speak and write in English.
So the attention has been on tariffs across the supply chain, but for truckers, something more important actually hit the wires today. The Trump administration has issued its executive order on driver qualifications. This attempts to address some of the concerns that the trucking industry's had about drivers that do not speak English and do not have the proper documentation to be truck drivers. In fact, we've heard over the last couple of years that a large population of truck drivers that are actually driving commercial vehicles don't have proper work permits to even work in the United States, let alone drive a truck. We've heard stories of CDLs that have been issued to drivers that do not qualify, never took the test. These are things that have actually been popping up quite a bit. Something that initially I dismissed as just largely typical xenophobia that the industry has been accused of. But as we dug into, it is a real problem. This is really happening. Yes, drivers that do not have work permits are driving heavy-duty trucks, and drivers that never passed a CDL are driving it. The Trump administration attempts to address that. And this really does another thing, is it actually enforces safety because it's ensuring that driver is qualified to drive a truck. It does provide enforcement. One of the things that has been really lacking is this is not new federal laws. It's just that under the Obama administration, a lot of the states were instructed to not have strong enforcement and could not put a driver out of work for not meeting the requirements. Not having a right to work did not mean anything because you could not put the driver out of service. Again, the way the states manage and execute the federal laws as it relates to commercial truck driving is they put a driver that is in violation of those out of work or out of service. But this particular part of the law, enforcing English speaking proficiency and ensuring that the driver has the proper work documents, is not something that the states have been able to do. They were instructed by the feds not to enforce that. That was really up to the feds to do so. The Trump administration's focus on this is basically sending a message that the industry hiring undocumented workers, drivers that do not have the ability or authorization to work in the United States, puts their business at risk. And drivers that do not meet English proficiency also puts their business at risk because that driver and that truck will be put out of service. One more thing to keep in mind is that this problem is becoming exponentially more challenging in the freight recession because there have been such a flood of non-resident workers that have really taken trucking jobs that the Trump administration wishes to address. I talked to an insurance executive that works for a very large insurance company involved in trucking, and he told me an estimated 40% of the truck drivers on the road are first-generation immigrants. And by his estimation, as many as 10% of the total truck driving population would not meet the English-speaking requirements. This is something that I think is pretty important to watch. I think we'd all agree that a driver that's driving an 80,000-pound truck down the highway should be able to read the signs and be able to communicate with law enforcement, as well as anybody that's that they meet and interact with. They should be able to communicate simply out of safety, if nothing else. I think we'd also agree that we want drivers to have proper work, be authorized to work, and have CDLs that are issued by the states under the rules to ensure that we get proper vetting. Any American driver, any American-born driver that was born here would naturally have to go through a process of making sure that they complied with federal and state laws. And I think it's only fair to ask anyone driving a truck to do so. Now, this will have capacity implications. We could see a situation where a number of truck drivers over time get put out of service that are not English speaking, and trucking companies and truck owners become pretty reluctant to hire those folks. If that happens, we could see a pretty sharp reduction in capacity. Of course, this is not overnight. This will take time. This is happening at a time where we are also looking at the supply chain and a slowdown in freight activity. And I don't know that this fully corrects the excess capacity, at least immediately. But I think over time, we could see a better, faster balancing, and it's something to keep in mind. Anybody that's been around the freight industry knows that it's incredibly volatile and things can change literally overnight.
Donald Trump is about to shake up the trucking industry for the good. Donald Trump is about to sign an executive order for the chaos that's happening in the trucking industry. What he's signing an executive order is every truck driver in the United States of America is going to have to be able to speak and understand the English language, be able to read and write the English language, and be able to comprehend. Obviously, our market right now is saturated with drivers that do not speak the English language, do not know how to read the English language, that are here on work visas. And obviously you all understand what's happening in the trucking industry right now. We're in a trucking recession. So this executive order, what exactly is going to be in the literature? Are there going to be fines or stuff like that? That's yet to be seen. But I can honestly tell you, this needs to be done, right? I don't know about you guys, what's your opinion on that? You can comment in the comment section if you want. But me personally, I think it's a great thing that's going to happen. The market will change regardless, because at the end of the day, it's saturated. There's not enough products to move around because there's too many drivers. And if those drivers are here on work visas and so on and so on. So, but if you're here, it's a heads up for you to start understanding, reading and writing, and be able to speak the English language. God bless every trucker, but it needs to be done.
Donald Trump has signed an executive order saying that if you are going to drive a truck in the United States, you must speak English. The problem with this law is that we all know that certain people are going to be targeted when it comes to this law, like black and brown people. It's not going to be white people that don't speak English, like Russian and Ukrainian truck drivers. A few months ago, the state of Arkansas actually implemented this law. I made a video about it, and people came for me in the comment section saying that I was making this up. In the state of Arkansas, if you pull over at the weigh station, they will ask you, do you speak English? Yes. Do you read English? Yes. Read us what this says. And then they'll ask you, can you write English? Yes. Okay, write whatever we tell you to write. If you can't pass that test, you get a $5,000 fine, and the company you're working for gets a $10,000 fine. And while this may be a law for safety while driving, I think that it's unfortunate that, unfortunately, it's going to impact black and brown people mostly. What do you think, TikTok? Do you think that this executive order is definitely for our safety while we're on the road? Or do you think that while it may help people stay safe, it's also a way to target non-English speaking people that are black and brown? I want to hear your comments in the comment section.
All right, Trump signed the executive order requiring English proficiency for all truck drivers in America. As a consultant and an expert witness to some pretty large law firms, I would tell you this is a safety issue, because you'd be surprised how many cases I see and where this is the issue. The driver can't communicate, whether they're on a roadside stop, a rest area, law enforcement, it doesn't matter. And if you can't communicate in English at all, I don't know how y'all getting these bootleg CDLs, but whatever. It's a safety issue. It's not a new rule. He's just kind of reinstating it. But people are already hitting me up like Zeus. I got a lot of Hispanic drivers. First off, this doesn't just apply to Hispanics. There are tons of Russian drivers in this country that don't speak a lick of English. So if you're young in the industry or any kind of a business and this applies to you, here's what I would do. I'd go on ChatGPT and I'd say, hey, write me an English proficiency program with like an 8 to 10 question and answer test at the end of it. And I would have that done in English and Russian. Next, I'd go online and I'd hire a VA. You'd be surprised how many VAs around the world speak like 5 and 6 languages. I'd look for one that speaks Russian and Spanish and that could talk to me in English. I'd hire him or her for nights and weekends as a driver assist tool just in case. Third, I go out and create an ad that says free English proficiency training for all truck drivers. And if I was looking to target Russians, where would I put it? Chicago. If I was looking to target Hispanics, where would I put it? Out west or down south? It's problem solving 101. So instead of freaking out, you take this piece of legislation and you turn it into a recruiting tool. So is this Trump executive order good for America and good for the industry? Keep it hard.
There are so many things wrong with the trucking industry, and Trump is worried about people speaking English. Obviously, there are procedures in place for when you get your license. You have to be able to understand these road signs and everything else. There's even extra procedures put in place, obviously, to get your CDL on top of your regular license. You worried about the wrong thing. As somebody who was over the road, let's focus on the wages that they pay these truck drivers. Let's focus on these cent per miles. Let's focus on regulating these brokers and all that money they be taking off of these loads. Let's worry about putting some regulations on how long these shippers and receivers have you sitting there waiting to get loaded and unloaded. Let's worry about getting these truckers paid properly for having to sit at these warehouses 6, 7, 8 hours, sometimes overnight. I think there's a lot of things that we could be focused on more than worrying about the language that someone speaks, because me personally, I've just never been in a situation over the road where I was worried about the driver next to me being able to speak as much English as me. Like, you talking about you worried about them not being able to read the road signs? These are people that have a license. It just really feels like he's spending a lot of time trying to fix things that matter the least. It's just so many issues that come to the top of my mind that a president could fix with the snap of his fingers, or putting ink to paper and signing an executive order like he's so frivolously doing. There's so many other things that you could be worried about. And please don't get me started on that lady that said my Uber drivers finally speak English again. This administration is genuinely a joke, and I understand why people from other countries are on travel advisory for here. Seriously.
So this morning, hundreds of videos I've seen of truck drivers who can barely speak a lick of English saying they're going to have to give it up. We're also seeing reports that a lot of foreigners are putting their trucks and trucking businesses up for sale. A lot of people would say they ruined the trucking industry. Rates are so much lower because there's a lot of foreigners who don't keep their trucks up to par or all their licensing and permits up to par to cut costs, and have been skating by, still making a profit, while legitimate trucking companies haven't been able to survive. So if you do the research, there's like 700,000, 650,000 foreign truck drivers in this country. A percentage of those that don't speak a word of English because they're being pulled over and they're being ticketed, and their companies that they work for are being notified that, hey, you can't have drivers out here that can't speak decent English. We should see a reduction in truckers, and hopefully that will help bring safety to the roads and bring the business of trucking back for those who are legit. Because yeah, it's been rough the last few years, and with this whole tariff war and lack of freight, it's going to be an ugly couple of months for the trucking business until things get squared away before it comes back. What are your guys' thoughts? Let me know.
In major breaking news, Donald Trump is expected to sign an executive order today that will require truck drivers in the United States to be proficient in the English language, which is odd considering that is already a requirement in the United States to be proficient in English if you have a CDL. The only problem to this is enforcement, and this would affect about 7% of truck drivers in the United States, and that's about 250,000 drivers, and this is incredibly important for you to know. 72% of goods in the United States are transported via truck. That's food, gas, medicine, things you use every single day. And this is incredibly important for you to know, because prices are already skyrocketing and shelves are going to be empty because of these tariffs, and this move is just going to push that over the edge, removing 250,000 truck drivers from the industry. This isn't going to affect billionaires. This is going to affect everyday Americans further. They're trying to push this as American first, but this has nothing to do with America first. This is going to just cause empty shelves, increased prices, and empty bank accounts.
Trump is about to force truck drivers to prove that they can speak English or they're out. Let's get into it. On Monday, Trump signs an executive order that makes English proficiency a non-negotiable safety requirement for every commercial trucker in the United States. They'll have to show they can understand road signs, communicate with officials, and manage cargo procedures, all in English. Now, on paper, okay, sure, safety's important, but here's the thing no one's talking about. A huge chunk of our drivers are immigrant drivers here on work visas. This is an industry already suffering with shortages across the country. TLDR, this is going to hit the trucking workforce hard, and that's going to affect all of us, especially at a time where we're already seeing empty shelves, delayed shipments, and prices through the roof. So instead of fixing the economy, lowering costs, we're going after truck drivers due to language. This will only exacerbate the shortage we're about to
Now,
see soon here.
this executive order was introduced during Trump's presidency as part of his broader immigration and national safety agenda. While federal regulations already required commercial drivers operating in the U.S. to be able to speak and understand English well enough to converse with law enforcement and read road signs, this order aimed to tighten those standards, pushing for stricter enforcement and clearer guidelines on written communication as well. The goal? According to Trump's administration, it was about safety and accountability, making sure every truck driver on the road can understand emergency instructions, communicate effectively during inspections, and navigate our highways safely. But for many, especially immigrant communities and independent drivers, this raised concerns about discrimination, job loss, and fairness. So, what do you think? Is this about safety or something else? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and comment your thoughts. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button for more real talk from AI Crystal. Until next time, drive safe and stay informed.